a bunch of mutts, all humanity's blended, and all this other type of stuff, which is their propaganda. Obviously, there's some pretty pure elements left on this planet, in spite of the egalitarian nonsense. People tend to like their own. And I'll have more to say about that in a minute when I go into academia. But Azimuth gets even with the hybrids by building a jump gate, and he goes back into their world and he mixes them up. He blends them. He blends all the hybrids, winning the big galactic battle. But this two concepts of blending and purity and all kinds of crazy alien stuff, pretty much out there. But Ben 10 Alien, the finale is something to see, especially if you know anything about the Sumerian text. It's rather entertaining where they're going with this stuff, and also very subversive, obviously very subversive. I was asked what is the best cartoon out there. The only thing coming close that's even entertaining is Johnny Test. Johnny Test is about some blonde-haired, blue-eyed, little perfect flame-hair Aryan with his talking dogs, and he's got two brilliant sisters that are mad scientists who both have red hair and blue eyes. He's got a dad. His dad stays at home and takes care of stuff, and his mom runs a business. So in that way, it's kind of a, what do you call it? I don't know. I forget exactly the scientific word for that. When women do everything in society, men stay home or whatever. That part is a little backwards, but it has some really funny elements in it. As far as cartoons go in modern times, it has some really comedy elements in it. The antagonist in the actual cartoon is Bling Bling Boy, and Bling Bling Boy is a little wigger, a little white nigger as they call him, and he is comedy. He's always getting taken to school, and you'd have to see it. It's as far as cartoons go, it is the most racial cartoon out there, and it's, you know, all these little white girls doing all kinds of crazy inventions, and Johnny Test doing all kinds of crazy stuff. It could be better, but it's not as bad as Generator Rex and some elements in there, or Ben 10 Alien. It's pretty interesting. In the next part, I'm going to answer your questions about the Dr. Farrell. I'm going to talk about Dr. Farrell here for a second. And now a word from our sponsor. Have you ever said to yourself, gee, I would love an undercover lover? Or maybe you said to yourself, gee, I would like to be an undercover lover. We know exactly how you feel. For a limited time only, on whiterabbitradio.net, you can buy an undercover lover. You can be an undercover lover. Yes, for only 25 carats. It is a great investment because all the money goes to fight white rabbit genocide, which is the thing we're about here at whiterabbitradio.net. So if you're looking for an undercover lover, or if you're looking to be an undercover lover, or if you're just looking to have the coolest undercover lover in the history of the undercover lovers, we have just the ticket for you, all at a very, very low price. Yeah, so hop on over there and pull up that merchandise tab. And when you see the undercover lover, you'll go wild at how beautiful it is. And hit that buy button. Support fighting white rabbit genocide in the easiest way possible. Be an undercover lover. Academics are an interesting group. In the paleo-conservative community or white nationalist community, you have several that are a handful that have become quite renegades. Quite radical in so much that they've been denied PhDs or under assault all the time for their research or for speaking their mind. Academia, especially the university scene across Western civilization, I include all of Western civilization, has been quite interesting in the past 50 years because there's been an outright assault on them from the beginning post-World War II by the new social engineering schools, whether it be the Frankfurt School or Tavistock. And once you brainwash professors, well, then the professors are going to turn around and brainwash the students, who then in turn become teachers and professors. And they were targeted specifically for this reason. And listeners of mine know that once you get under a particular type of propaganda, after so many years, it's over with. It's totally over with. It's totally done. True information won't mean anything to them. You'd have to totally redo everything, and since most of them have tenure, they become impossible to deal with, for good or ill. But when it comes to professors, they are by and large very biased on two particular levels, and they tend to be liberal, very, very liberal, ultra-liberal in many outlooks. In America, they would be traditionally democratic. In Europe, they're basically communist, most of them, but by and large, they're biased against business. Not necessarily big business, but they're biased against business as a whole. And their biases, from my experience, tend to be toward egalitarianism, the dreaded ism. But those are two biases. Sometimes they get around those biases. That doesn't mean they can't find the truth. Some academic, some white academic, some European academic might break out. But by and large, they come with those biases. You can't be in a university setting in somewhere like America or even like Germany and not and overcome the type of propaganda that's been leveled at the place. And, you know, most of it's done by professors to professors from a lack of moral standards. There is no moral standards anymore. You're dealing with a group, and in America, this is especially funny, that in the name of academic freedom, they'll deny you a PhD. In the name of academic freedom, they won't allow you to teach a particular curriculum. In the name of academic freedom, they'll give you an F on a paper for not parroting their views. In the name of academic freedom, they will do outrageous things. It always kills me when academics I know start talking about big business, because in many respects, academia in America is the biggest business I've ever seen. It is a serious racket, where in the name of academic freedom they could do things where no CEO could ever get away with it. You know, they all sit in their little fiefdoms, and you can't really fire them because they have tenure. You can't really do anything with them. And tenure means that they can teach at that particular facility forever. And I forget the whole entire thing, but all the ins and outs of tenure. But once a professor in America has tenure at a university, there's nothing you can really do about them, for good or ill. And it is hilarious to see them talk about and worry about big business. It is kind of funny. And as far as egalitarianism goes, never has an ideal been such a colossal failure on a global scale. I mean, just recently we had Sudan get broken up. Why? Because egalitarianism doesn't work. And the academics will state facts, and they could be absolute facts. You know, all Homo sapiens are related to the same amoeba 3 billion years ago, which obviously doesn't matter. If we're related to even the same Adam and Eve, all mankind is related to Adam and Eve. All rabbit kinds, all the rabbits on the planet are related to the same Adam and Eve 10,000 years ago. It really doesn't matter if you still have to split up Sudan today. It really doesn't matter if the biggest problem in the world over the last 50 years is ethnic conflict, and this ethnic conflict goes hand in hand with egalitarianism. But it is kind of funny, and of course we always point out the obvious. No one's flooding Africa with non-Africans and telling them we're all related to the same amoeba 3 billion years ago, and because we're all related to the same amoeba 3 billion years ago, we're going to create a blended humanity in only Africa. No one's flooding Guatemalan with non-Guatemalans and saying, you know what, we're related to the same amoeba 3 billion years ago. No one does these things. I always do that around academics, and it drives them crazy doing the mantra because it's true. And it's a knee-jerk reaction. Many of them realize egalitarianism is a failure. They just... when you're in that particular environment, so they're always biased against big business, and they're always biased toward egalitarianism, although, you know, one is a failure and one's ridiculous. Being biased toward big business is very common. It's very common. It's becoming more common because of it's basically what I would call a sign of the times. Now, is there a legitimate criticism? Could they go into legitimate criticism against, let's say, corporate law or the corporate person? Well, sure. Most of them don't have the particular skill set. You go deep into, I believe it's canon law, or early Christian law, early Christian tradition. It really goes back a long ways in Western civilization. But the reason they don't like big business is because they want the money and the power for themselves, and they want to centrally plan things. When you start digging into it, and Bob Whitaker over at whitakeronline.org was a PhD candidate at UVA, which is a pretty big school for economics, and he has some pretty funny stories. But the best academics are always renegades. They're always renegades. They always either get thrown out or have to leave or run off from a university or not granted tenure or not granted a PhD. They're the best because they'll actually write something useful or write something interesting at this late stage late in the 20th century, early 21st century. That's what you got to look for, in my opinion, a renegade. It doesn't mean they necessarily won't do a knee-jerk bias toward egalitarianism, although Bob Whitaker wouldn't. It doesn't mean that they won't say something to irritate you about go against free enterprise just for the sake of wanting their own power. Every once in a while, one of them will be in hot pursuit of the truth with a reasonable prospect of finding it in whatever field they're in. But it becomes quite interesting. I'm asked my views on big business all the time. You can make arguments against the corporate person, this type of thing. I view it as a sign of the times, to be quite honest with you. Right now, everyone listening to this will have some small business person in their area that is an absolute thief. It's true. It's a sign of the times. I mean, there's a local business here. It's a hardware store. And if you've been in a hardware store in business for the past 50 years or however long he's been in business, you know, he's competing with some tough big box stores in the hardware business, and his prices aren't that much higher for a local neighborhood store. But he fixes lawn equipment, and he fixes snow blowers, and he fixes lawnmowers, that type of thing. And if you've ever gotten the bill from him, you realize that you take it in for a tune-up or something, he ends up fixing all this other stuff and trying to charge you for it. So he's kind of known as a thief, but he's a small businessman. The reason he's not in jail is because he's not running a large corporation. Because if he were running a large corporation, well, he would most certainly be in jail. There's no way. It would be irresistible. It would be too much temptation for him not to thieve everything in sight. But everyone listening to this has a small business in their area that is run by a thief. It's the sign of the times. Big business is what it is because it's a sign of the times. You could talk about corporate law, but the reason that hasn't been amended is because of the sign of the times. And when we talk about business is no different than anything else, business people, in so much that they're subject to the same amount of propaganda and brainwashing. Even though they're smart people and they think they're smart like academics, they still fall prey to brainwashing just like everyone else. And most of it's, there's no moral standards there either. You know, most of it's done by business people to business people because of lack of moral standards. And the whole situation goes downhill. But everyone listening to this will have a small business in their particular area that are a bunch of thieves. Now, does that mean free enterprise doesn't work? Of course not. Of course not. You'd be insane to talk about scientific materialism working. But, you know, every once in a while an academic can have a legitimate complaint against some particular business practice or corporate law or some particular, the corporate entity, the corporate legal structure in general, but it is pretty rare. Generally, when they come out against the Hadron Collider or when they come out against something some business is doing, they only come out in the Hadron Collider. Bob Whitaker was talking about this. The Hadron Collider is in Europe. Is this huge project, and the academics only came out against it after they spent $3 billion. They gained somewhat power. They gained a great deal of power. They didn't come out before they had all that money, before they had the budget, before they had the power. Academics tend to do that. They want that money and power for themselves. And of course, common sense dictates to never trust anyone that wants money, that wants power over top of you, whether it be some corporate tycoon or some academic, some local wonk who wants to sit on a central planning committee. But that is the way of academics. But in the white nationalist community or paleoconservative, there's academics as well. And the academics generally come on the scene through accidents. Dr. Kevin McDonald, I'll put up a link to his Wikipedia, is someone out in America, and he's he's a professor of psychology at Cal State University Long Beach, and he's best known for his use of evolutionary psychology to inform his study of Judaism as being a group evolutionary strategy. And he ends up, this is a particular field, psychology, and he ends up writing a book, investigating the Jews, just happenstance. He just ends up writing a book